evening, everyone. This is Tony from her Homestead Skills, and today is a rainy day, so it's a perfect day to make my chicken soup from my chicken carcasses. Now, I had one extra package that I had purchased and put in the freezer and did not process, so I did take it out to thaw late last night. Yeah, it is thawed enough to take it apart. So I will be washing this and cutting out maybe any extra fat, because I really don't want it to be fatty. I want to be able to release, and it is still pretty cold, I want it to be able to release as much of the meat as possible from the bones. And as you can see, there's 4 carcasses. They went and stuck some skin under that too, which I don't want, but it isn't priced by weight. It's priced by, you know, just $2, $1.99 for the 4 carcasses, so I suspect that they just priced it at 50 cents a piece and leave it at that. So now I do have some water on the stove, and I'm not going to add anything to this bunch until after the meat has been released from the bone. So, as I said, I'm going to try and cut away any extra fat or skin, because I don't want that. So, other than that, that one looks good. This one here has a chunk of fat. Now, little bits of fat I don't mind, but I just don't want these big chunks in there. And skin tends to be pretty fatty too. So yeah, here's another skin I'd like to remove. And it's still fairly frozen, that's why it's not coming off that easily. It's still cold. It was defrosted enough to separate them, but okay, there it is. So that's 2 out of the 4. This one has a big chunk of skin. But no real fat to speak of that's of concern. And this one's good to go all the way around. Okay, so this is going into my pot of water, and actually I decided I needed to rinse these off before I use them, so I have filled this up again with water, and I have rinsed the chicken off, and now I'm going to dump this water and then put fresh water and put it on the stove to boil. So yes, you do want to wash your chicken. Okay, so I have water on the stove as we speak, and these 4 are going in, and I will top it up. I do want to make stock as well, but I want to, instead of throwing the meat away, I want to be able to use it for soup. So I will be, when that has become tender and the meat's loose, I will be pulling those out, letting them cool somewhat, and then pulling whatever meat I can off of these bones. Okay, so while my chicken is cooling, so that I can take the meat off those bones, and I will be putting the bones back into the stock once that's done. But meanwhile, I have cut up some celery and an onion, and that will go into the stock for flavor. And I'm short of carrots, I only have 2, so I'm going to use some dehydrated carrots for this job, which will work perfectly. Okay, so we'll let that continue to simmer away, and when that chicken is cooled enough, we're going to pull the meat off and put it directly into a mason jar. And yes, this, you can see where this would be too difficult to pull off any other way. But boiling it certainly loosens the meat off the bones. And sadly, I've been throwing this all away. In this day and age, I don't think we can afford to throw anything away. And I don't want the fat, I just want the meat. Like there's a nice healthy chunk of meat. And here as well. Just make sure I don't get any bone in here. Okay, that's probably enough for 2 to 3 pint jars of soup, single individual servings, or maybe even 2 quart-sized jars with, there's enough meat there for that. So what I'm going to do is throw this chicken right back into the pot, all bones, and let them continue to cook. Okay, meanwhile I have just covered this with cellophane and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator until my stock has fully developed and the vegetables have imparted their flavors into the stock. You know, I've just added the celery, the onion, and dehydrated carrots, which will take a little bit longer. Otherwise, I might say that the stock itself is fine, but I do want the vegetable flavors in there, and I think that I'm just going to make chicken soup with stock, and then what's left over I'm going to just do individual stock jars for Mark to use for cooking or whatever, and he does use them for cooking as well. Okay, this should make, well, we'll see. I'll get some jars out. Okay, first things first, I did managed to get the chicken into 2 pint jars and then filled it up with the chicken stock that I was making. Now, I had a number of options here. I could have put that into quart jars and added vegetables, and I would have had a ready-made soup, or I could leave it like this, which is what we opted to do. I spoke to Mark about it, what he wanted, and that was that we do the individual meat and stock on its own, and when we go to make soup, he can either add another jar of stock if he needs it. He could add noodles, he could add vegetables. You can make soup in whatever way you want. But the base of it is the meat and the stock, so that is going to be readily available, and it's interchangeable. So anyway, I did end up with 2 fairly hearty amounts of meat for soup, and depending on how we make this up, it will either be soup for 1 or soup for 2, and yeah, it could actually just be eaten up just like this too. Now, I've decided in this case that I will add about half a teaspoon of salt to this, and just to give it some flavor. The rest of it I don't bother. Okay, so as usual, we need to debubble here. And that's fine. And then of course, clean the edges. Now, my dilemma here is going to be that even a pint jar of chicken needs to be processed for 75 minutes, and the stock only needs, I believe, 20 minutes off the top of my head. I always check. But because I have checked and the chicken will take 75 minutes, I have two ways I could do this. I could do the chicken on its own and the stock on its own, or I could put them all in one canner, which is what I intend to do, and process everything for 75 minutes. Hopefully that will not destroy my stock. I've never done that before, never canned stock for 75 minutes, so we'll just have to see how that works out. Okay, rest of the vinegar goes into the canner as usual. And my canner is already on the stove heating up. Rings as usual. What people call finger tight. I just make it a little snug. And I find that that works best for me. I've never had a problem just doing it a little bit snug. Every time I do what people call finger tight, it isn't tight enough, and that causes other issues. Okay, so everything is going into the canner for 75 minutes. Okay, I have removed all the jars from the canner, and it doesn't seem to have hurt the stock that it was processed longer than it needed to be. Every jar looks good. Haven't lost any fluid to the canner. The canner water is clean. I tend these days to leave things in the canner for quite a bit longer than most people do, and I have no issues with siphoning, I have no issues with sealing, and less issues altogether if I just let it cool in the canner for a longer period of time, in no rush to pull it out. But that's me. I mean, I'm quite comfortable doing that, and I only do it when I don't need the stove, obviously. Okay, so I have my 8 jars of stock and 2 jars with chicken that was saved from the carcasses that can be used for soup and perhaps other things as well. So from now on, whenever I make stock, I will be saving the meat. Waste not, want not. This is Tony from Her Homestead Skills. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.